This particular poem, The Bow to Worship, was a poem that God gave me after a special event that took place. There was an elderly gentleman at our church, and he was to be evicted from his apartment because he was a hoarder. His apartment had so many things within it, from the ceiling to the floor, that he had gathered. And so myself and three other individuals were elected by God, let's say, to go and help him out. And this is really what happened. So I want to read it for you, and I pray that you are blessed by it. But there's a beauty looking back at poetry when God gives it to you to remind you of where you've been, and also it could be a place that someone might taste in the future. So here goes. The Bow to Worship. Lord, we present ourselves to you this day. We are willing to serve without pay. Order our steps and have your way. Rising up to do the Master's will, even though the job ahead could make one ill. But the call to worship sure brings a thrill. We could feel heaven bowing low, watching us as we were on the go, picking up heavy crates off the floor. We took time to pray. From worship, we didn't want to stray. Bowing at the feet of the Master, we wanted to stay. The elderly gentleman studied us as we went, as he sat on a pile of carpet that was bent, knowing by the Master we had been heaven sent. All the clutter had to go, from the ceiling to the floor. We carried it out the door. Sweat rolled down our face as we hurried to clean the place. We wanted to finish this race. Lord, we bow to worship you. Our strength, please renew. Help us work until we're through. Little critters crawled all around while the elderly gentleman sat down. He watched for a while and didn't make a sound. These things were all the things that he owned. This place was his home, even though he didn't have a phone. When we had moved half of his stuff, the older gentleman said, "Enough." We knew on him this was tough. We said, "We need to continue on." It was said in a kind tone. He sat and looked so alone. One helper started to cry. Another helper let out a little sigh. As the others stood by, the older gentleman started to cry. We had to stop and call on the Master, avoiding at all costs a disaster. We needed a devil blaster. The tallest helper bowed before the older gentleman. He said, "There are choices to be made, and you must take a stand. Now you know I love you, man." He handled the older gentleman with so much care, with a heart full of love to share. A scene like this was precious and rare. The older gentleman decided to release his stuff. We knew on him this was rough. Sometimes life can be tough. I've seen worship in its purest form. This sure wasn't the norm. From heaven this came from. Through the window the sun did shine. We were used to help this soul out of a bind. In life, it pays to be kind. On the older gentleman's face was a smile. as he continued to rest for a while, looking on trusting like a child. Our bodies were feeling the strain, felt like we had been hit by a train, but it was a good kind of pain. At last, all the work was done. We even had a lot of fun. We now know what it means to bow and worship the Son. And then the Lord added this: don't ever think I'll forget this day. You served so willingly without pay. I heard all your hearts did say. I am well pleased with this crew. Look what I can do with so few. I am really going to bless you. This was the breaking of a brand new day. Now I'm going to pay. Step right this way. You did more than fine. I'm glad you're mine. Sign on the dotted line. This has been the bow to worship. I hear the Lord saying, it is an hour that I am looking for those who will bow to worship, those who will bring a weighty sacrifice, those who will come humbly, those who will give their all. I'm looking for yielded ground, children. I'm looking for those who will surrender to my voice and make me their choice, who will lay their all on the altar, those who will bow to worship.